Dave here, how are you? Here we go, we've got the second stage of this little video series that I'm doing on turning a log into a pencil box. Sounds extreme, but let's have some fun doing it. Here we go. Now you can see that I have laid out all of the timber that I ripped on my table saw. Now I'll show you some video of me ripping it. Because the thickness of the log was more than the depth of my blade will cut, I had to turn the timber over after I'd done the first pass and rip it again. Now you'll notice that I'm using push blocks, my fingers are well away from it. I'm not using the splitter with the first lot of cutting because I'm only able to use a riving knife. The splitter holds the blade guard. Now because the timber can't go through, because I'm not cutting a full section out of the timber, it might be a little bit hard to grab hold of, but what's happening there is I have the riving knife to protect me from the timber closing in around the back of the blade as I rip it, and also if I'm pulling the timber away from the back of the blade after I finish the cut, the timber won't actually touch the blade as I'm pulling it past and flick it back at me. That riving knife is extremely valuable and keeps me safe. Now when I turn the timber over and go again, I don't need the blade up as high. I've lowered the blade down so that I'm not exposed to as much spinning metal, which is good. Anyway, I finish the cut, the piece of timber comes out, I use a push stick and all that kind of stuff, keep myself safe, and then I decide to rip some more pieces off as well. And so what I've ended up with are some pieces here that are anywhere between 4 to 6 inches wide. I've got some sections over here that are around about 2.5 inches wide, a bit thicker. I'm going to leave those to season out a bit more. These guys here, I also put through the thicknesser, took them down to 1/4 inch. Now the great thing about my little thicknesser is it's got a depth stop. So it's like a set of steps inside, and I'll show you a picture of those steps. And I can set it to 1/4 inch. So every time I rotate the handle to bring the blades down a bit closer and closer and closer, when they get down to being 1/4 inch, that's where they stop. I can't lower the machine anymore because that's where I've set the depth, and I end up with all of this timber being the same thickness. Bit of a no-brainer for me. I need these things. So that was a couple of weeks ago I did all that. Now I have all of the timber. It's been sitting in my workshop and sitting on these gluts. I've lifted it up so that the air can get all around it. Now remember, this tree died 6.5 years ago odd. It's been standing dead. It has been absorbing water out of the ground, but it hasn't been growing. So I really haven't had to season it. I'm just drying out the water because trees are fibrous and they soak water up. Every day I've come back into the workshop and I've turned the pieces over. Now that might be excessive, but what the result is I have really straight timber, and I'm very surprised at how straight and true it is. I have a little bit of cupping, but that's not a problem. I don't need the full width of these boards. We'll be selecting the parts out of this that I absolutely love. So just for an example, there's a nice piece of timber there. Over here, there's a beautiful piece of timber there, and there's a nice piece of timber there. You can see I've been playing around with the box joint jig on that one as well, just to see how to cut. It's gone great. Now that I've got all my timber laid out, the next thing I've got to do is I've got to nut out how I'm going to make this box and what I want the box to look like. Now I've got to remember, this is for a child who's going to be going to school in a year, going to kindergarten, and she's not going to want to lump around something heavy. She wants it to be nice and light and be easy to use on her table. I don't want hinges. I want it easy, a nice slide top. I don't want it sliding sideways. Just slide in a couple of dados in the side of the box. And it's got to be able to fit pencils and possibly a couple of other things there as well. Maybe a pen, a couple of pencils and an eraser, and that should do it. We don't want it big. I want it wider than it is tall because that just sits nice and flat on a table, easier for it to hold. And if she's got it sitting there that's nice and wide, she can see more of her pencils in the bottom, rather than if it's tall, they'll all be stacked on top of each other. Yeah, just little things like this come to me. So I'm going to draw a picture of that box and have a little bit of a play with dimensions. I'm going to get a pencil or two, measure those, And once I have all of those dimensions, that will be all those lengths, that'll be my internal requirements of this box. So this box will be having 1/4 inch thick sides. I need to allow for that and a little bit of movement in case she gets something that's a little bit longer than an ordinary pencil. I have a few routers set up here already. I have my router table here set up with the little Rockler box joint jig, and I'm going to be making box joints with that. And over here I have my DeWalt trimmer. Now that spiral upcut is for doing the little dado around the top of the box for the lid to slide into. Now what else have we got here? You'll notice that I've got, this is a little idea I came up with. I've got my dust extraction system running overhead, and I've got a hose coming down beside that cutter for the box joint jig, and I've zip tied it to a little fire extinguisher. You know, I could have used a beanbag or a sandbag of some sort, just something to hold this nice and close to the cutter, and that'll work brilliantly. I've already done a couple of cuts with it. I'm so impressed with it. No dust anywhere, and that's what I love. Now the process of actually making the box. Now I have the width of all of the, I have the dimensions of the timber that I want now. So I'm going to rip all the timber on the table saw to the right width. Then I'll take it over to the box joint jig on the router table and make sure that all of those joints are nice and snug. Do a little dry fit, see how it looks. When I'm happy with that, I will then take it to my router mat. Now I have this little mat that I can put on top of the table, and it's pretty handy for holding small pieces if I want to sand them. I'm using 220 grit paper straight off because the finish that comes out of the little CT330X thicknesser is that good. If I was to go back to 80 grit, I'd rough the surface up. So I just want to make it a nice clean finish, and I'm going 220 on the inside so that I haven't got to worry about finishing it off after I've built the box. It's going to be too small for me to sand in there, so I sand all the parts on the inside. Now you'll notice I've also got my face and edge marks on the timber, and they're on the outside of the box. So that just lets me know which joint to put with which. So I've got A to A, B to B, C to C, and so on. Gluing the job, I'll use the little glue brush. I'll use the little Rockler glue brush. The reason being, it's got this little tang on the end of it that I can just push the glue into the joint much better than using a brush. It works so well. Then I'll use the Rockler cawls, the box joint cawls, and because I'm using a 1/4 inch joint, I'm using the 1/4 inch cawls, and they will push in and make sure that those joints pull up nice and tight. Any of the timber that's going to be sanded off at the end will be pushed out past the joint, and it's just such a nice job. Because they're even, I can sit the job on a piece of timber and put the cawls all the way around, use the Rockler strap on it, tighten it up. That little ratchet strap is fantastic. I can get into such small spots. It's just small. I can do very small boxes with it, and I'm over the moon with that. Now that I have the strap on, I can stand the job up on those cawls. I didn't want to go to the bottom of the cawls on the table. The reason being, I wanted to get equal pressure. The end, one of the ends here is very narrow, and I found that if I was tightening it up in the conventional manner, I was starting to get pressure on the top of the joint, not down the base, and that was uneven. So that's why I've done it this way. Pull it all tight, wait for it to dry. And then the next thing to do, now I can measure up the base, and I can dock it off at the sliding compound miter saw, the Capex, which is a new addition to the workshop, and love it. The laser makes things so easy. I can glue the base to the box out of the clamp. The box is out of the clamps now, so I can glue the base to it, and I'm using a nice flat surface to pull the box and the base glued together down onto this flat surface so that we won't get any twist or warp or anything. Now I can leave that sit for an hour or so. Now I'm taking it over to the belt and disc sander, and I always make sure that I've got the table set perfectly at 90 degrees to the disc. and then a whole heap of the work is just done for me. I haven't got to worry about it. I use the little mitre gauge, set it at 90 degrees to the face of the disc. I'm running 80 grit paper in this, and it makes short work of it. And I can also clean the base off at the same time, along the edges, shape it up a little bit. Now I can bring it back to the Bessie K-body parallel clamps. And these are great. I'm holding them down to my bench top here with the Carbotech fence clamps. I did a video on this a while back, so there's no need for me to dwell on it too much, except for to say this is the best way to hold small boxes. It's brilliant. So I'm sanding here again with 220, going right around the whole box. Now you'll notice I'm also using the hard pad on the little Festool ETS sander. If I don't want any roll off on the edges, I go for the blue pad, which is the hard one. And it's doing a beautiful job. And I can also get the super soft pad for the same sander and put a piece of 220 paper on that. And then I've got a sanding block straight away. And it's nice and soft, and I can do all the corners with that, and it will roll a little bit. And that's the kind of look I'm looking for. Next thing to do is to have a look at the lid and measure the distance, and then just slowly rip the lid to width. And when I get it down to awfully close, I'm going to just do a last pass with my hand plane. Now I have thicknessed the lid and the base down to 1/8 of an inch in the little thicknesser that I've got, my 13-inch thicknesser. The spiral head does it easily. So now that I've got the lid cut and slid in there, what I want to do is I want to shape the end up a little bit more, just to give it some organic form. A square end right at the front where you put the lid in just looks a little bit prickly. It's not inviting, so I just wanted to round the end up. That's where you slide the lid in. Your hands are going to make contact with that a lot, and they'll be in motion, so I don't want her little hands catching on anything there. And I've shaped the lid as well to roll around into that little round form at the end of the box. You'll notice there's a knot that I've left it. I selected that piece out on purpose. That little knot there, just in case it gets tight, she can put a finger in there and just pull it back a little bit to free it, and then she can grab hold of the end of the lid and pull it. And I just want it to be organic. If you have a look at the side of the box, you'll see there's a couple of sections there that look like they were shaved out of the same part of the tree when I cut them. The knot that's fixed, that's not going to fall out, tight knot, looks like it's been part of the same part of the tree as the side of the box. This bloodwood's just amazing. Alright, we've got all that, and I've sanded it off, and because I'm replicating what my great-grandfather did for my mother, on the lid of Emerald's pencil box I've put EJW, which are her initials, replicating what happened for my mother when her grandfather built her pencil box. Last thing to do is to give it a wax. I didn't want to treat this with anything that's going to be a total plastic seal, because I thought, I didn't want it peeling or anything like that. There may be a little bit of moisture left in the timber, so the best way to do it, I thought, was to use this wax, and that's why I've used the EEE Wood Turners and Restoration wax, and it's come up absolutely fantastic. I used an art line pen, just a laundry marker to put the initials in. I tested it on a piece of timber and run the wax over it a little bit later just to make sure it wouldn't pull it out, and it's done it fine. Now I have a heap of timber left over. It's not just that pencil box that came out of that log. I have all this timber sat on my table saw, and it's going to be used further down the track on other little projects. So that's inspired me to do some more things. My wife has seen this pencil box, and she now wants a cutlery box of some sort. She hasn't worked out what it's going to look like yet, but she saw the box and fell in love with it. So looks like I'll have another little project further down the track for utensils. I'm hoping a little bit later on that Emerald will be coming in. I've told her mother that the boxes here waiting for her. So we'll see how that goes when I give her this thing and see if she likes it or not. Do you know how I was doing a video and making a pencil box for you?
Yeah.
Do you want to see it? I finished making it. What do you think?
Good.
You know what that says?
No.
What's that letter?
A. J. Double J.
Whose initials are they? They're yours. What do you think? Can you open that? How's that? Can you put the lid back in again?
Yes.
Bring that up here a little bit. Do you like that?
Yeah.
Do you want to show Mum?
Yeah.
Hey, do I get a kiss, thank you? Oh, thank you. And a cuddle too. Oh, I'm very lucky. There you go.
Thank you.
Pleasure. You going to show Mum? Well, that seemed to go well. I hope Emerald enjoys that pencil box for many, many years. She seemed to like it. I hope so anyway. Again, if you like the videos, click the like, subscribe, share it around, leave comments. I love getting comments on the videos. Till next time, see you later.